Today, I'm going to be speaking with graphic designer and director of marketing and communications, Nelson Amaro. Nelson is also a co-founder of Indieblock Records and someone who has proven to continually be a strong leader for the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation. If you want to support the podcast, check out the links in the description. Now it's time to figure out more about how Nelson has become internationally paid. Where did joining creative design, or artistic design, and business first come to mind for you?
I always explain graphic design to actually whomever, especially to business owners that are always like, hey, I have a niece or a cousin that can do that for me. Graphic design is art solving a problem. So whenever you do want to make something creative, but also make it functional, it's that intersection between art and business, right?
Yeah.
So that's where graphic design comes in, at least for me.
Yeah.
I really like for something to be functional as much as it is aesthetically pleasing, or as much as it can be. Sometimes, we were speaking earlier about menus. You have huge menus with 60 menu items. Well, you have to make it work somehow. And adding pictures to it, or adding something that makes it flow better, it's part of graphic design. So I think that idea of it's art solving a problem is what drives me to actually follow this career path, or at least start on that career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And where did that start? Where did that path start? I know you have a very dynamic history. You started in Mexico, correct? And
correct.
Where was this?
Well, I would say I have 15 years of professional experience in graphic design. I'm 30 years old. So the first time I got paid, it was when I was 15. So that's when I consider myself a professional since 15. The first time you get paid, that's when you start being a professional at what you do.
Yeah.
And it started because I was some internet forums, and at the end of each post, of each thread, you have like this little signature block from whichever post you put on there. And I didn't have one. I just had my name on plain text. So in that same forum, I searched signature tutorial, because I thought that was how it's called, right? And I found someone that literally explained how to do his same signature or his same design step by step on Photoshop. So I got Photoshop, allegedly hired it. Very cool. And I got Photoshop that way, and I followed these steps from this guy, and I learned how to use it just by testing each tool. And okay, this tool does this, and this other tool changes the color, and I ended up recreating his signature, and then following the same steps, I did mine. And from there it started. So I started just testing out each empirical evidence. Okay, this does this, and this other tool moves this thing. So that's how I learned.
Wow. So you started designing your signature, and then you were intrigued, moving, and just finding ways. Like, somebody probably approached you and said, like, hey, Nelson.
Oh, of course, I always like to get in trouble, right? And volunteering and everything. So at school, if they need an invitation for a quinceañera or something, especially we're talking about Mexican culture, right? So quinceañeras were pretty popular in that stage in my life. So sweet 16 quinceañeras, they were like, hey, can you help me with my invitation? I was like, of course. So I used my skills to do that. So it started small. I didn't get paid on those, but they get to know you, right?
Yeah.
So I started with that, and later on it became like, hey, my dad asked if you could do this for his business. And I was like, yeah, I can do it, but not for free.
Yeah.
And that's when I got paid the first time.
Nice.
The first time, I think it was a festival of a church or something that I did a poster for them.
And now we're getting into freelance negotiations, right? Which is a whole landscape in and of itself, right? What were those critical moments where you started to make, we could talk about early mistakes, right? I personally, when I freelanced for even software, there were projects where I was like, oh man, I definitely underbid this. This is way more work than I should have signed up for. What was that experience like for you? Did you underbid projects at first? When did you realize that you can negotiate for those things?
All the time. Like, it happened all the time. Up to this day, it happens. But I think if you Google like a price sheet of how to charge for a logotype, it would always tell you that, okay, depending on the size of the business is how much you will charge, because it's how much value you are adding to them. If it's the national bakery like Bimbo in Mexico, or you're not going to charge them the same amount of money you're charging to a local panaderia.
Yeah.
Right? So it all depends on the size of the client. Of course, since I started super small, my prices were that tiny as well. So I don't know. You know Fiverr, the platform Fiverr?
Oh yeah. Okay. I use Fiverr a ton.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be $5. Now it's more than
it starts at 25, 15. Yeah.
So I think that was kind of my price structure. Like, I know you're a small business, you're barely starting out. Maybe you're one of my classmates in the high school, so I won't charge you $100 for a logotype. I know you're barely starting, so $20, $25 all the time. I started with what perception do I have of your business and how much value my design or my logotype or my work can add to your business in particular.
Yeah.
So it goes also with menus and brochures. So it all depends on how much value you're adding with that you're solving for them, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, it all depends on the size of the business. I always try to take that into consideration. I have my price, but I will add a zero or move a zero depending on the size of the business and also on the side of the border that we're in. So it might be 3,000 pesos in Mexico, but it might be $300 here.
Yeah. So absolutely. And how has navigating that been, right? Like you're able to supply because of your circumstances, like where you were born, location. You also moved to the States, right? And now you're working in Brownsville. We can get into more detail on that later, but being able to navigate both sides of the border, what's it like culturally, one, right? Like how does business is conducted? I would even argue business in border towns of Mexico is even different than central locations in Mexico or southern locations. Correct. I mean, just like in the States, right? Like the way business is conducted in Louisiana, the type of negotiating practices is going to be different than New York City, right? Totally. But what's it like, in that situation, navigating that? Do you get, and how do you even, are the marketing tactics changing as well, right?
Whenever we go market with my current job to Mexico, let's say Monterrey, which is not a border state nor town. Well, they have a little connection on the border. Anyhow, I always market or services as bring your business to a market you already know. Because we're 98% Hispanic, at least in this town we are at right now. So it's not much different between the sides, the Mexican side and the United States side. However, I think it's easier to get money in the United States, like to get a job, to have at least a minimum wage that's by law the minimum wage. In Mexico, we have a lot of informal employment in which it's under minimum wage. So people are a little bit more savvy. They like to save their money. They don't spend it as easily. No matter if you're a business owner or you're just someone, an employee of another company, right? So I think that might be the difference between the two sides. On Mexico, on the Mexican side of the border, I think we're a little bit more careful how we spend the money. So if you say, hey, my logotype, the cost of it, or the cost of designing my logotype for you, it's, let's say, 5,000 pesos, $250. You have to justify a lot. Why is this worth $250, right?
Yeah.
While on this side, it's a little bit more it's easier to charge that amount because it's easier to make up for the money if you spend it or if you invest it. That's what I've noticed. And I don't know, just yesterday I was at a co-working space in Matamoros, and they were having these meetups for entrepreneurs, but they were charging.
Wow, to meet up. And was it working?
No, they had their church session, so they were trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
And in here we have it all like weekly, for free. So there's a difference right there. People in there, well, first of all, they're not attending because they don't want to spend money for this meetup. And the business mentality of the person doing the meetups is like, hey, if they don't have money to spend or they're not willing to invest in my meetup, maybe it's not a customer I would like to have. So is that mentality of, okay, I'm going to use my money wisely in Mexico, I think, while on this side of the border on the United States, it's a little easier to make up for that loss of that investment
Yeah.
in this case.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. I also think that tactic is interesting. He's using the payment as a barrier.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly the word that he used.
It's a filter. Interesting.
And I was like, okay, we cannot afford that luxury. Like, don't do that. You need people in the door. Don't charge it.
Yeah, just to get them in. Yeah. Freemium. Start free and then go premium.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Interesting. And so you were building your freelance career. You attended school.
I went to school in Mexico, and I thought I was only Mexican until 17 years old. And my dad approached me at 17, and he was like, you know what? I'm an American citizen, so you can be one too. And I was like, I don't want to. And that's not true. United States. I love United States. And because I was still in high school there, so if I started this process, I'll have to live in the United States and then cross every day to the high school in Mexico and finish up there. It was the easiest way to actually finish the process without like revalidating all these subjects on the other side. So that's what happened when I was 17. If you start your green card process, you can automatically do the citizenship without going through this waiting period that if you do it after you're
18.
Yeah, 18.
Yes.
Right. So when I was 17, that happened. And I started like dipping my toes on the U.S. market with that.
Nice.
I started partially living here, crossing every day, going to school, coming back. But that obviously opened the doors to many other things, especially speaking English on a daily basis, right? Because it's something that you don't do as often. Even though you're on a school which has English as a subject, it's not something that you conversationally do.
Yeah, immersive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. And so you were crossing every day, getting into the market. You know, people are realizing that you offer this service. Maybe one business owner refers you to another, or one client to another client. When did you decide that you wanted to start Indieblock?
Okay, well, that's a whole lot of years later. During the pandemic, a friend of mine. Okay, let's go back a little bit.
Yes.
So one of the events, how can he say curse words on this podcast?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Yeah. It's one of the events that we did in Matamoros. It's called Fuck Up Nights.
Yeah.
It's a nationally, actually worldwide event on which entrepreneurs talk about their failures. You were part of it, actually.
Yes.
But with another name here because it was
it's a rebranded.
Because it was part of the university event. So we did Fuck Up Nights in Matamoros 5 times. And then when I came here, I wanted to do it because, well, it's something I know how to do. It's fun. It helps the community. Mm-hmm. So I try to gather like these entrepreneurs, people that I know, to share their stories. And one of them was a friend of mine that he was kind of for a fund manager with crypto. Mm-hmm. We gave him our crypto, and he was supposed to manage it and give us a little profit. He lost it all in a casino, crypto casino.
The crypto casino.
So
crypto roulette.
His failure story during that fuck up night in Brownsville was that story.
Oh.
So that's when I reconnected with him, and he was obviously into crypto.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, you know about crypto? Well, something about crypto. Yeah. You already know what things not to do. And by that time, he met a startup that was called Emanate. Emanate is kind of the Spotify of the blockchain.
Okay.
And he became a rep for Emanate. Out of this crypto disaster, the silver lining is that he met this other representative from this startup.
Nice. So
they were planning on building basically Spotify on blockchain.
Nice.
He became a rep. And during this fuck up nights that I invited him to, he was like, hey, do you want to do something with this, let's say, role that I have? Because I have access to all this technology. I have access to all these artists. I know you know people in Matamoros and in Brownsville, so you have access to these markets that we can test out. Mm-hmm. You want to do something together, and that's how it started. So we got together and built this independent record label, which will work with our artists that were not getting paid fairly on Spotify or on other platforms.
Wow.
And through the blockchain, well, everything was verifiable. If you were getting paid 50%, you knew you were getting paid 50%.
Yeah.
Right? You can see the plays of all your songs, how much it generated, how much you were getting back. So we turned the pyramid upside down and we put the artist first, and we got the smallest cut of it, which is added the artist to the platform through my friend, which was a rep of the platform. So it was pretty easy.
Wow.
And it eased the process of actually getting them new artists, which was something that they wanted.
Yeah.
So we just were this business was a byproduct of this other my friend's shop. So
Nice.
that worked like that. That happened during the pandemic, and we were like, okay, we have time. We may not have money because you lost it all, but we have time at least, and we have your skills, we have my skills as a graphic designer, and most of these artists. My friend is married to a Venezuelan woman, and he knew a lot of Venezuelan people that were musicians.
Wow.
And they were in need of money, right?
Yeah.
So it was the perfect combination. Okay, we'll have a lot of people that make music. They live in Venezuela. They need an income of somehow. They might not have like artists, cover art for their music. So, hey, you can design for them, and we can put it on the platform, and we can push their art somehow. So all of our skills combined together to make this happen.
Wow.
So during the pandemic, we added a lot of artists from Venezuela. We provided basically, it's not a universal basic income, but a steady income for my Venezuelan friends and his Venezuelan friends.
Cool.
So yeah, we even did a little online festival with all the artists that we had.
Nice.
So it was an experience. It was something I never thought I would be doing.
And it's merging so many different markets, right? Like you're I'm assuming you're also bringing Mexican artists on there, Venezuelan artists, American artists. I'm just curious, the American artists, if you've spoken to any, how do they receive using blockchain for their streaming services?
Since we were not making exclusivity contracts, if they didn't have a contract with any other label, they just wanted to be out there.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, another outlet for my art, please do. It's
cool.
It's free, and if I'm gonna earn money, go ahead.
Great.
So yeah, it was pretty easy to get people on board because we were not just saying, okay, if you're with us, you cannot sign with anyone else. But if you get discovered with someone else, feel free to do it. Of course, we want you to grow. If you're doing good, we're doing better because we have a lot of people doing the same thing as you.
Yeah. Fascinating. That's really interesting. I know some about blockchain, but more on the finance space, right? This is an interesting one. I never heard of it. I'm going to check that out. Emanate?
I think it's no longer around. They got bought out from other crypto streaming platform bought them out recently. So
well, congrats to Emanate.
Yeah.
Being acquired is always good in most cases.
Yeah. I mean, they made it. I guess that's the dream of many entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And the music gets out there. It's still
cool. That's very fascinating. And so you were working on that during the pandemic. And well, for everybody who doesn't know, I know Nelson because we've collaborated a lot for things for BCIC, which is the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation. What was that process like? What got you into that? What inspired you to maybe start getting more directly involved in facilitating the environment for entrepreneurs in a cross-border region, right? Where you have people from Matamoros coming over the border, seeing what it's like in Brownsville. You have people in the States that are living in this really unique region, right? For a lot of people who haven't lived in border cities, they're really different. It's not like, Kansas or you know what? Kansas might actually have a similarity in just KC because it's like right between Missouri and Kansas. So there's a little bit of like a state's pride
border.
Border. Yeah. Okay. But it's not as culturally dynamic as two nations, right? Because there's a lot of regulation involved there, and it gets very interesting in my opinion. I've seen some of the most savvy entrepreneurs I've ever met in my life. I met here in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, just finding really innovative ways to get businesses started with very little resources and turn them into wildly successful revenue and profit-making machines. So what got you started in that desire to maybe cultivate and contribute to the environment itself?
So I think it goes along the theme that we talked about earlier, that people that come from Mexico are a little bit more smart, are smarter on how they use their money. And when an entrepreneur, it's born out of necessity, you'll find ways to do things, to make things happen. So how it started at BCIC, for 15 years, I was freelancing. I had some jobs here and there. I worked actually for the Mexican government in digital governance for a couple of months. So we were managing the image of the city, trying to consolidate it, trying to make something that lasted. Because I don't know if you know about this, but in Mexico, every time there's a new administration, they tend to change the logos. They tend to change all the colors, everything, every single time. So everything that that team worked on, if it's not the same party, it gets lost. So what we try to
continuity and brand. Wow.
So what we try to do is like, okay, let's establish something, register it, make it, build it with the people, so the people can be part of the process. So if they try to change it, they will fight for it because they were part of the process.
Yes.
So we try to do that. We didn't stay there long enough because, well, things happened, but that was part of one of the things I did during those 15 years that I was freelancing.
Yeah.
And I had to cross every day too. Like,
wow.
So, as I said at the beginning, graphic design is solving problems. So through graphic design, I help a lot of clients one-on-one. I'm going to help you solve whatever problem you have. They want to communicate with my art somehow. So I did that for 15 years. And a bad client actually led me to saying like, you know what? I think I can do more than one-on-one. Let's see how can we find a way to help more than one people at a time. So that's how I found this job at the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation, which I'm not doing graphic design per se, but I'm helping more than one entrepreneur at a time. I'm communicating things that we do at BCIC. I'm basically solving BCIC's problem with this premise that I used at the beginning to help helping one to many. So that's how it started. And coming back to the theme of cross-border entrepreneurship, I think it goes along that, being smart with the resources and being an entrepreneur out of necessity. Most of the restaurants that we see here, or new restaurants that pop up, are restaurants that were once in Matamoros, so have their counterpart in Matamoros because people were fleeing because of violence or whichever reason you want, but it's almost always out of necessity. So there's no Brownsville without Matamoros. There's no Matamoros without Brownsville. It's like a symbiotic relationship between both. Yeah.
That's interesting. And one thing I've noticed from all of the communication that comes out of BCIC is it's effective and to the point, which I really appreciate. I really appreciate the way that you communicate on either newsletters or updates, posts on the site, right? Because I do keep up with the website. I look at what you guys are doing, and especially with like the accelerator events, the consolidation. What were important learning lessons that made you become aware of the value of effective communication, whether it's to a client, right? Like one consistent thing I'm doing is communicating with investors a lot, right? And you have a lot of really good qualities in your writing and the way that you communicate. Where did you learn to communicate effectively?
I cannot pinpoint like a place or a time. I think it's experience that you gain along the way. But if I can sum it up in a phrase or in something, in a sentence, it's you need to tell the other person, the person in front of you, how their life is going to be better if they become your clients, if they invest with you, if they come through your door, if they consume your product. So you got to tell the story of how their life is going to be better. Not your story like, hey, I'm the best. I'm the best company. I have all the certificates. I'm the number one, whatever, because they don't care. They don't care about you until you care about them first. So you always need to tell the story about them first, and then they will care about you. And then they will ask about you and share your stuff. So remember how I said that when we go to Monterrey, it's expand your business to a market you already know. I'm not saying we're the hottest market in Texas. I'm not saying we are. I'm saying you will expand your business. So I'm talking about you first. I'm caring about you first. I'm telling you the story that I need you to imagine first, so then I can talk to you about how can we work together. So that's the lesson. It's to communicate effectively. You need to tell this other person the story of how their life can be better if they work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes along with one of my favorite my favorite Nelson quotes is the future is collaborative, right? That's like, something I've heard you say multiple times, and broadcast that message. Yeah, that's really interesting because effective communication I found to be is very important, and it's necessary if you want to collaborate effectively, right? If you want to build a team, if you want to have people believe in what you're trying to accomplish.
In the unofficial value and mission vision document that I built for eBridge and BCIC, well, values, we all expect people to be respectful, to be loyal, to be trustworthy. That's something that all business should have, right?
Yeah.
So we try to put in values that are non-traditional. One of them, it's not a value per se, but it's the concept is look for the connection. So if you go through our doors or you want to talk to us and we don't know how to handle your situation, we'll always look for someone that has dealt with something similar. So if you go to one of our events, we're always saying like, hey, maybe you should meet this other person. And I just did it like this with the podcast. Yeah, maybe you should talk to this one for this podcast concept. So we're always trying to look for the connection, and that builds the community. Yeah. Because you're not building a community builds itself. And I think it goes along with the future is collaborative, because we cannot do it alone. Yeah. There's no way to do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good habit. To instill it in values is something I'm definitely taking note of. Speaking of finding those connections, one thing that I find really interesting about what BCIC does and about what you and your team do is you guys soft land and help collaborate in the soft landing of companies coming from Mexico to this market. What kind of companies are coming?
As I said, it's mostly restaurants and service industry. And by the way, this is done in partnership with UTRGV ECC. So it's not only BCIC, it's the team of eBridge that we do all this together. And since BCIC is funded by sales tax, Brownsville sales tax, their job is to bring it in. My job is to make them fall in love with Brownsville so they can stay here, and then we can actually help them. So it's mostly service industry, restaurants, and logistics. These are like the big 2 or 3 that I can name right now.
Areas. Yeah. And why, do you know maybe why it's particularly restaurants and logistics?
Well, logistics, we're at the border. We're at the border, right? So
logistics makes
we have all the modes of transportation: space, rail, pipe, road, plane. Yeah, we have everything basically. And that's easy. And we have a lot of, I'll say, supply and demand, right? I think we're not enough people in the valley doing logistics, or at least not working together to make it the hub for logistics in United States, right? So there's a lot of market service. If you are in a business that deals with import-export, this is something that you might want to look into. And restaurants, I think, I never asked myself that.
I mean, being a restaurant owner in the valley, I can definitely say people love, and also being Hispanic, we love eating together.
It's generational, maybe. Yeah. It's like, okay, my family started this business, and now I grown into knowing that this is the way to make money, and therefore I keep doing this.
That makes sense.
And if it's maybe like a
self-fulfilling prophecy,
and also the loop keeps hitting itself, because if there's a lot of restaurants, the only jobs you can get are in restaurants industry. And that's my case in graphic design. The first clients that I got were restaurateurs. And then I didn't even have to make ads anymore for my services. They always talk to another restaurateur. They know another business owner on the same industry. So my clients are partners with, okay, I sell vegetables to this other guy, so maybe you should talk to him. So it's always recommendations. And there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of people that need help. And also, maybe we like to cook and we're good at cooking. Maybe that's why, right? We have a Mexican food. It's good food.
It's bomb, absolutely. And like culturally, we really enjoy like eating meals together.
Right.
Like I get a lot of families that come into the restaurant, and I mean, sometimes it's 10 deep, 12 deep, right? And they regularly come. I even have people from Brownsville that come all the way up to where we're at,
Right.
right? It's a 30, 45-minute drive, but they love that ability to dine in and sit together and enjoy food and talk about the cheese man,
Yeah.
like get caught up, right? And that's what also really connects the community, right? Because then you know the servers, and then you know the owner, and they, hey, how are the kids doing?
Yeah.
Have tons of conversations like that.
And now mixing together the American culture and the Mexican or Latino culture. Latino, it's family and reunion.
Mhm.
It's the place to talk to, catch up with your parents or your family, your close family. While in the United States, food is fuel.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we combine those two things.
Yeah.
Like we have the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Like,
Tons
everyone
of carry-out orders for the quick ones, and then the dining-in facility.
or
for dinner.
a family that only like works all day, and the only time they have to actually be together is during lunch
meal.
or a meal.
Yeah.
So they all go eat together.
Oh yeah.
So we have a lot of people a lot of serviceable market and in the food area, of course.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And how have you been? I know that this is going to be a really like broad question, but as an artist, how have you been seeing the new technology that's emerging impacting what you're doing and how you're doing? Is the two letters that everybody wants to use, and I'm not going to say it. It's like Voldemort, right? He who shall not be named, it who shall not be named. What does artificial intelligence? How does it help you with what you're doing, and how has it improved any of your business productivity?
Sure.
Internally?
Maybe not on the graphic part, but on the copy side, on the writing, at least it gives you a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
And sometimes you had a lot of things to do because you have to be constantly producing.
Mm-hmm.
And this just helps, like a little crutch for you to keep walking, right?
Yeah.
And it's weird to call myself an artist because there are people that literally make beautiful things, and for the sole purpose of being like aesthetically pleasing, this is art, right? And the things that I do most of the time have a commercial purpose. So, well, maybe I'm not an artist, I'm an artisan or something that's made just to be commercialized. But going back to the AI concept, I like this quote, AI took my job. In my case, it took it to the next level.
Nice.
AI took my job to the next level. So it's something I use every day for creative writing. I have my list of banned words. If AI uses this word in the creative text it generates, I will change it. Like,
Nice.
we're at an event, and I'm doing this mental checklist. Okay, I heard unwavering. I've heard trailblazing, heartfelt.
Yes.
All these words that AI, at least ChatGPT, likes to use. So whenever we're communicating something, I ask my team, like, okay, you need to change these words because we still need to feel human, right? We're using this just to help us, not to do our job.
Yeah.
So I use it every day. It's been helpful. It helps develop a lot of the content that we need to develop. Give you a lot of ideas for content itself. If you're a business owner and you don't know what to do, because content is king, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just putting a prompt, okay, give me content ideas for a pho restaurant in West Lago, Texas, and it will exactly give you 15, 20 ideas that you can do for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 of them will be useful, but still it's something that really gives you an input that you can use later.
And then if you're tracking, I mean, that's a huge component of it, tracking data, right?
Yeah.
Tracking open rates, tracking conversion. Those are things that you look at.
Oh, of course.
Nice.
We had this RGV Startup Week recently.
Yeah.
One of the announcements that I sent, a regular open rate of an email, it's 20%, which is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
This announcement had a 90-something open rate.
Nice.
So the subject was, we're failing tonight.
That one was good. I remember that email. That was a good one.
So I was announcing failure nights, fuck up nights. So people were like, okay, something's happening, right?
The cheese man, bro?
Yeah, of course.
Dude, it worked.
That's something that actually came out of ideas that I got from ChatGPT. Okay, give me ideas to promote this particular event that is this kind of event, right?
Wow.
So it worked.
That's incredible.
It worked.
Yeah, dude, 96%.
90 something percent.
Anything over 80 is like, what the? You hit a gold mine with that.
I think our industry standard for economic development is 12%.
Whoa.
So, okay. So,
yeah, so like freaking 8 times that or some like 5 to 8x. Nice. Yeah. That's a great. I'm going to definitely continue to evaluate that cuz especially lately I've been obsessed over open rates, conversion rate, right? And just like keeping track of that data. There's some really great tools out there to help you keep track of those things. And so you guys have been soft landing companies facilitating a ton of things like, some of the events that I've been to, 1 million cups, right?
Mhm.
That's a really effective event just for general networking and community building purposes. Then you had an incredible week with RGV Startup Week, which essentially highlights all of the different components of the startup ecosystem in the Valley, not just technology startups, but also restaurateurs. We had a ton of different panelists that spoke on a variety of different subjects. I was able to speak there and communicate some effective information for people. When you guys are collaborating in your work environment, how are you guys coming up with these ideas? Like, are you, I'll leave it there.
Well, sadly, most of the time it's reactive. Like, hey, we need to do this tomorrow because the city asked for it and we need all this because we're funded by sales tax, right?
Yes.
So we respond to, the city most of the time or things that political will puts on the table.
Nice.
We don't have to approve it.
Yeah.
Hey, we're working for the city in general.
Mm-hmm.
So if the city says, hey, you will need to go promote Brownsville and what you do to this event, you need to have the statistics ready. So, getting those statistics is something that AI actually helped. I failed to mention that. Getting statistics about void analysis, what businesses could fit in this particular real estate spot, or how many spots we have empty in the city, what's the total addressable market in the city. So, most of the time it's reactive, the ideas that we have to actually work with. And it's always sitting down and eliminating a lot of ideas. We're always like, okay, it happened today. We're trying to come up with a name for a program that accelerated businesses. And the name that we ended up at, it's Frontera.
Nice.
Which is border.
Yeah.
But they were like, okay, you're part of Grupo Frontera, which is not the one you're thinking of. So we're always looking at it at, okay, what is the public going to think when they read this? Because we always have things like maybe too close to our eyes that we need to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
Frontera would definitely be interpreted in a whole different way. Yeah.
So it's Frontera, but we added Leadership Institute at the bottom. It's no Grupo Frontera.
Yeah, I like that. Frontera Leadership Institute.
So it's always a round table thinking not as team members, but as the public. Okay, you'll get the role of the audience.
Yes.
You'll get the role of the devil's advocate. Think of the worst possible scenario, and then we go from there.
Good.
And it's fun. I really like it, and I think marketing, at least in my team, it's one of the fun departments.
Yeah.
Not that the other ones don't do fun work, but this is where you get to explore this creative side and work on all these things, right?
Yeah. And what kind of potential doors are you guys considering opening? Like, one thing I've always been curious about is eBridge has a really interesting environment, right? Are you guys considering doing video studios or even one thing that I really like that you guys have done is offer those spaces for entrepreneurs to rent in the co-working space, right? That was really cool. That was something that I had only ever seen done before I saw the eBridge in large cities. I had seen WeWork, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a famous co-working space. And then I had also seen Venture X is another one. Yeah. But I really like the theme of eBridge. I mean, the design was really good. I like the open floor space because then you can also use it for community events and things like that. Is there anything in the works that you guys are considering or exploring?
Sure. What we learned on this last conference that we went to, that people may not know Brownsville by name, but as soon as you mention SpaceX, they know where you are and what you do, or at least what they think you do.
Yeah.
So opening up more space-related programs or entrepreneurship related to space technology, aerospace, it's something that we have on the pipeline. And yearly, we had this program called Startup Texas. You were part of that.
Mhm.
And we had two main branches, the quality of life projects, which encompasses everything service industry, food related entrepreneurs, e-commerce in general, and this other one that's emerging industries. So I think we'll branch it out more. So food and service industry has its own cohort because we had such an influx of people doing that
Yeah.
that we can no longer put in the same box as everyone else. So we're going to branch out those and make programs specific for if the market has a supply
Mhm.
for that. Well, let's train them, and because we have found through our programs that people have been doing business for 10 years, and then they go through one of our programs and they figure out that they're not making any profit.
Mhm.
That for 10 years they have just been like rolling the same ball around and playing with the same amount of money, and they've never grew.
Mhm.
So by going through these programs, they can figure out how to actually grow and make money and scale and franchise or whatever they want to do with it, with their business. But it's a functional business that's sustainable. So
Oh man, we're going to dive into that. That's so. What are you guys doing for? I mean, that's incredible. So, like, one thing that I've always been curious about is how to navigate choosing to stay private or to franchise, right? Like, what? And even in that, how is your franchising agreement for the owner operators going to be different than others?
right.
Like there's so many interesting ways that you can slice that cake.
Mhm.
What are you guys thinking in terms of like bringing in that expertise?
One of the things I failed to mention during the soft landing question is that through UTRGV, Julio always says that, hey, I want you to fail, but on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So he will develop or help you develop all these different business plans, all these different agreements, and then compare that to SBDC data
Mm-hmm.
and see how it actually serves the market that we're trying to reach.
Mm.
So we will make you develop a lot of paper, work on paper, but not because we just want you to do homework. We actually want this paper that you're developing, this business plan, this canvas, this study to be functional for your business. So when you're ready to launch, or when you're ready to actually come over to the United States, because these are mostly Latin American businesses, you already have something that at least works very good, very well on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just by the way we do it, at least for now, it's developing all these multiple scenarios and how they fit the market through the partnerships that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning earlier on the podcast studio or TV studio. The good thing about working closely with the city and with the university and always looking for the connection as part of our values is that our neighbors on the right side of the building, it's the conventions visitors bureau, the Visit BTX people, and they have their own studio, they have their own podcast studio, their own TV studio. We don't have to build it ourselves.
Yeah,
we can just knock the door and ask to use it because this is for the community, right?
Yeah.
So it's always building partnerships, looking at who can provide this data that we can access through the university, through the software that we have purchased, and how can we provide that to you, business owner or entrepreneur, at the lowest cost possible or for free, so you can actually be successful. Because if you're in Brownsville selling a lot, we're funded by sales tax, right?
Yeah.
There's the only scenario in which I win as a let's say my work as a business is when you're doing well, when you're selling a lot.
I like that alignment of incentives, especially in the service industry. One of the biggest expenses that we pay is sales tax. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm excited to see what comes out of that, especially in the way of navigating scaling restaurants or anything service related, and then exploring like business case studies. I'm really looking forward to that. That's gonna be cool. That's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, and then you see that when you're running analysis from the market, that there's places in Brownsville that are nationally top 10.
Mhm.
Like, how can this border town with 200,000 people outsell all these other places in bigger cities, right?
Wow.
And that's one of the problems that we have, actually. It's how do we account for this cross-border traffic? How do we put that into our analytics? So it's a problem that all economic development organizations in the border have. And when you're trying to sell your city to an investor,
Yes, that's huge.
it's something they have to mention.
That's so important.
It's something they have to mention.
And you have to be able to quantify that.
Yep.
Like that. And so are you guys investigating how to effectively quantify that transient daily traffic?
We need workarounds because there's no data. One of the things I've thought about is, okay, go to the money exchange places.
Oh, yeah.
See what's the food traffic on there.
Yeah.
Think about an average or ask how much money are you actually exchanging, and then do like, okay, reverse engineer it. Like, so many people walk to this place, and we can average that they change this amount of pesos to dollars. So therefore, the amount of money coming in, because these people are changing the pesos to dollars to spend them. They're not sending. They're not doing it just to save.
They're not going to walk back with
right.
they're going to
dollars,
spend money.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a workaround that I've been thinking of, but there's no current solution. So
especially given like the debit and credit, yeah, that's just for cash.
One of the things I know they did in Harlingen is for the hunting permits to justify the existence of this place. What's the name? The hunting and fishing place in Harlingen. I cannot remember the name. Bass Pro Shop.
Oh yes, Bass Pro Shop.
Pro Shop.
Yeah, they're huge. Yeah,
they're huge.
It's smack dab in the middle of the city.
Right. It's okay. The population of Harlingen, of the valley, didn't justify the existence of this place.
Boy, that's an interesting one. Yeah.
Right, but how can we prove to the investor that there's enough people interested in hunting and fishing? So you go to the permits that the hunting permits that were being processed through the year.
Yeah.
And how many of those were foreign? And then you got the statistics of, okay, there's people coming over from Mexico getting these permits that then go to hunt, go to fish, and need the equipment. So that's a workaround, and economic developers have been doing this kind of things so they can actually figure out ways to attract investors, because there's no data or reliable data that we can readily access from Mexico, or from cross-border at least.
That's so interesting. That is, my gears are spinning now. Yeah, you're talking about like a problem in an area that's very interesting.
The last week that I tell you I want to develop an app, that was exciting.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
because that's a serious problem.
It is,
and that's a great customer to have, is the economic development committees, right?
They're all of them. That's the goal. The everyone, no matter which part of the country you were from, all economic developers, all the software businesses that were there that we talked to, they didn't have a solution for that.
Wow. So, what's interesting is I do get a lot of great business data from Mexico.
I know you do?
Yeah. Huh. We'll have to go off air for that one. But no, that's fascinating. So there's a data problem there. So for everybody, all the young listeners that are looking for cool problems to solve, well, there's a big one right there. Go out and solve the data issue between, because this isn't just the southern border. I'm sure that this is a border period issue.
It's a border.
Right? I'm sure that people that are I was just in the south of France, and there was a lot of different people that were coming from Morocco, that were coming from Italy, right? Because Italy's relatively close, and in Europe you can travel by train pretty easily. That might be something to look at, is how do they keep track of that transient data, right? Which databases need to be talking to which databases. That'll definitely be, it's an interesting problem for sure.
So going off the name of the podcast, Internationally Paid, not all people use cash. So money exchange houses, the places, they won't be all the data. They will just be part of the data.
That's a portion of it. Yeah.
So
what about the credit and debit?
Yes. How do we access that data, and how can we measure that?
Yeah, man, you'd have to look at the Well, you'd have to see if, I mean, okay, anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into just open brainstorming.
No, we need, well, if people listening have a solution, please do.
Yeah,
we all
comment
need
that.
it. We all need it. And it's part of how we get new people to come to our city and to invest or
Yeah.
to build a business.
And to see the correlation between what you just claimed, right? Like you said, that some of the service businesses are competing in the top 10 or the upper percentiles of the United States when we do have just 200,000 people in Brownsville, roughly 200 to 300, right? And how can that be? Well, there's got to be data that's not being tracked.
Yep.
Right.
So think about it. So we have a Texas Roadhouse that people prefer to drive to Harlingen from Brownsville, 15, 20 minutes, because there's an hour of wait here.
Wow.
So they would rather that we have retail leakage.
Wow.
I mean, we have leakage of money because people.
I mean, I have customers that come all the time for pho. They come from Brownsville. I have families that I see every month.
Yeah, and it's quicker to go to West Local 45 minutes from here to have a bowl of food than to wait in line here. So,
wow. Yeah.
There's market for us, and these kind of cases are the ones that we build with the data that we have through the partners that we have, and we can do that for you. Just walk through our doors and tell us about your project. And well, my area is marketing and graphic design.
Yeah,
I can communicate whatever you want, but I can also help you on the back end.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm gonna put Nelson's LinkedIn in the description so you guys can connect with them. And if you have any ideas, you want to expand to new markets, uncharted territories, well, you got a great point of contact here. And yeah, so Nelson, we're getting close to the end here. I want to ask you, as somebody who's seen both sides of the border and has had experience working in a freelance environment in a self-employed entrepreneurial setting, what is something that you would wish you would have known growing up in Mexico, learning about it, right? Like, and you have so much experience on both sides. What's something that you would give to a young entrepreneur or a young aspiring entrepreneur that's on that side of the border?
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, it's a common occurrence in Mexico that you believe that if you don't do your, maybe here too, you don't do your taxes right, you'll go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's always important to ask when you have a doubt. Don't do it because you don't know. Ask people, connect with people, attend events, make those connections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that maybe I failed to do when I was younger. I went through college focusing on, actually I was working on my freelance stuff during the classes. And I should have been making those connections with my classmates and with people. So that's something that I advise everyone to do. Always, whenever you have a question, you have a doubt, ask. The worst you can get is a no, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, you ask someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no, I can tell you, you won't go to jail if you ask an accountant in Mexico about your taxes. One of the most successful events we had in Mexico was named Sin Miedo al SAT. So I'm not afraid of IRS. A lot of people attended to it, and they were asking all these questions like, hey, I got paid because I was fired and I got this money. I don't know if I have to pay taxes in it or if I should declare it or not declare it.
Mm-hmm.
So they had all these simple questions that may stop them from investing it or using it in other ways that may lead them to a better business or growing or, using it smartly. And yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions and connect with people because, well, there's no better time to do it than today. And you will regret it if you didn't do it in the past, right?
Absolutely. Those are great words to live by. And I absolutely agree. Yeah. I couldn't. Yeah. Ask questions, especially about your taxes.
Yes.
Especially in Mexico.
Sin Miedo al SAT was one of the most successful events that we had.
Incredible. Well, Nelson, thank you so much for being here with us on Internationally Paid, and look forward to talking with you next time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.